And hello all. My name is Maponga J. Let me try and put some more power here in case she decides to snap off while we're online. Hello one and hello all. Maponga J here, broadcasting from Zimbabwe, the great Zimbabwe. I think I have neglected this channel for the longest of time due to other developments that are happening in other spaces. You always want to try and keep your content away from each other so that the audience will be more apt and informed to what we are trying to achieve. And all kudos, all thank you to Melvi Production for keeping the channel alive. And we would want to take just some few moments for this afternoon to be discussing the development of international politics, what is happening, where are we, and where are we probably going. But in the light of that conversation, we'll also want to do some biblical analysis to verify if some of these events that are falling on the face of the earth are by any chance related to the mainstream biblical text, to which I have studied extensively. And once in a while, when you see some certain events marrying and coming together, you cannot help it but reference some of the old material that you would have read. That's maturity as far as I'm concerned, because then you look outside, you look inside, you look around you, you look above, you look below, and try to make sense of what is happening. However, in our introduction, we need to explain the schools of thought that inform what we call apocalyptic literature. The apocalyptic literature, it is the literature that is spoken in hard times, in times of difficulty. It is literature that is written for hope. It is literature that is given to give assurance in times of storm and in times of trouble. As such, the biblical text comes to us also with a great amount of apocalyptic literature. Over and above the historical part of the book, the Psalms, the words of wisdom, the major and minor prophets, the synoptic gospels, the Pauline writings, you have within that space of literature the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, the book of Revelation in the New Testament. Put that together also with glimpses in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Ezekiel, and even in some certain cases you may find texts such as in the book of Psalms 24, Psalms 23, 24, beginning to have that apocalyptic assertion. Matthew, Luke and John and Mark, in the closing of their books also, when they begin to ask questions, so where are we and where are we going? What will be the end of the times and the end of the days? The Messiah projects to them quite a good chunk of apocalyptic pronouncements and saying, eschatological sayings. In the last days, this will happen. In the last days, this will happen. And when you look at some of this literature, the complication for me has been the mischief of what I might want to call the colonial theologians or theologists who deliberately decided to ignore Africa in the interpretation of apocalyptic pronouncements. China was excluded in those interpretations. We have had scholars such as Gerhard Hassels, we have scholars such as Samuel Bakyoki, we have had more Adventist scholars and many other scholars who seemed to, you would struggle in these prophecies to find interpreters who are clear to the central part of prophecy being Africa itself. We have had the Yahwist interpreters of scripture who then suggest that all prophecy is just some spiritual kind of writing. You can hear from the word preterists, you can almost tell that's a Catholic way of interpreting scripture. where there's nothing that is deemed practical except spiritual lessons that you can learn from the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. You have what you may call futurists. Futurists are saying, don't worry about nothing in the prophetic books is relevant for now. All things will happen in the future, wherever the future is. So they tend to suspend all prophecies and push it into the last 7 years of the events to happen on the face of the earth. That is also informed by the usage of the number 7 in terms of interpretation. You now have the dispensationalists who say, no, prophecy has nothing to do with all of us. It has to do with Israel, and it's only Israel that is spoken about within the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. The rest of the people in the congregation and the citizens of the world must not bother themselves with literature. It is solely focused at the nation of Israel. That's where most of these Pentecostal dispensationalists will find their interpretation sitting right there. Then you have what you also call the historicists, which is the position of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and some of the mainstream religious organizations, who say prophecy has an audience in the past. Prophecy has an audience in the now, given in the past. Is there a word from the past that is relevant in the present? And ultimately, the interpretation then says, you also look into the future. Is what was said also being said? Will it be said? Do we have an audience in the past? Do we have an audience in the present? Do we have an audience in the future? Within those four, what I might call schools of thought, I would suggest that the more constructive way of looking at biblical text and prophecy will be the historicist interpretation, which then looks into the past, looks in the present, and focuses in the future. The futurist, you may want to pick some elements from that even in the future, some of these things will come to pass. The dispensationalists, you might want to pick some elements from that yes, Israel is actually part of the prophecy itself, if not the main player in the prophecy. And ultimately, the preterists, you may want to look at them also and find out what are the spiritual lessons that we can learn from these biblical interpretations. Enough of introductions and academic scholarship. I want us to zoom into the role of America, the role of China, and the role of Russia in relation to Africa and the biblical prophecies that we have. In the book of Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 12 and 13, in the book of Daniel chapter 9, 10 and 11 and 12. You can also bring that across to put these chapters together. Then you can begin to see the similarities from the Roman Empire, which broke into the 10 kingdoms of Europe. These are the Burgundians, these are the Herulis, these are the Sueves, these are the Alemanes, these are the Anglo-Saxophones, these are the Francophones, and in the modern language, that would be Germany, France, Britain, Scandinavian countries, and etc. And the collapse of the image of Daniel chapter 2, which is the collapse of the Babylonian Empire, as we have it in history, the collapse of the Medo-Persian Empire, the collapse of Greece, and the collapse of the Roman Empire itself. Babylon, you're looking at the Nebuchadnezzars, you're looking at the Nabopolassars, and that transcedes into Medo-Persia, the Artaxerxes, and that breaks into the Greece, the Alexander the Great, and then you look into the breakaway of Alexander, the Las Marcases and the Ptolemies, and then the Roman Empire itself, which is the empire or the kingdoms of the Caesars. This is not biblical material. This is historical material, which you can go and research in history, and you find it like that. And then the breakaway 10 kingdoms, then you find the immersion of the transition between papal Rome, pagan Rome into papal Rome, leading us into the 1260 days of the Dark Ages, which collapses in 1798 when Bethia took Pope captive, and then the beginning of the new world, which is America as we have it today. Not sidelining, of course, that before the setting up of America, slave trade had already started taking place as early as 1442s, which brings into fulfillment the prophecies of Isaiah chapter 19, 20, and 21. You can go and have a reference to that. And also the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, as it suggests that. So it's interesting reading, by the way. I'm just throwing these things. If you want to go and reference, it's all up to you. I've been there, I've studied that, so I could share that information quite freely. And then the 1796, 1798, the beginning of the American government, then ushers us into what we might want to call the days of the times of the end, vis-a-vis the end of times. Because in the coming up of America, then Revelation 13 says, I saw a beast coming out of the, as contrasted to the beast that comes out of the water, that comes out of the people. The Adventist interpretation is that the beast that comes out of the land is the coming up of America, which looks like a lamb, but it's and its mouth, it looked like a lion and it walked like a leopard. So you may want to go back again to chapter 7 of the book of Daniel and find out the 4 beasts of the book of Daniel chapter 7, which is and then when you find in chapter 13 is a summary of the beasts of chapter 7 of the book of Revelation. The animal that is described in chapter 13 has all the characteristics of the beasts of chapter 7 of Daniel. In other words, in terms of its governance, its head, it will be like Babylon. In terms of its speech and etc., it will be speaking like a dragon. But when you look at the way in which it is behaving like in the Medes and the Persians. But when you look very carefully, it is hungry for food and eating flesh like the bear. Therefore, the summary of chapter 13 is actually found in chapter 7 of the book of Daniel, where the kingdoms of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and finally Rome manifests in the American government. The government forms are Babylonian, pagan to the core. Babylon. If you look at their immorality, Greece on steroids. If you look at their laws, once they make their laws, they don't change. Medo-Persians. But if you look at their behavior, they are the beast, Rome itself, crushing everything that they come in contact with. You will be able to see, and the events of the last few days have revealed to us the true nature of America. We thought it was Vietnam. We thought it was Cuba. We thought it was Japan, Nagasaki, and Hiroshima. We thought it was Afghanistan. We thought it would be Syria and Iran. Oh, just when we are about to forget. Then Libya. Few days later. Then Venezuela. Now we can hear America talking about Europe, about Greenland, about Nigeria, and how America has actually set up military bases around the whole world. For what? They speak like a lamb. Speak religion, speak freedom, speak rights. But they behave like Rome. They behave like Greece. They behave like Medes and the Persians. They are the dragon themselves. America is the dragon. But while they are the dragon, chapter 11 of the book of Daniel will tell us the kings of the north. And the kings of the north, North Korea. Kings of the north, China. Kings of the north, Russia. And this is the new conversation around the global superpowers that we are looking at. And the arrogance of America with its financial institutions crumbling in front of our eyes. We cannot close our eyes as we see BRICS coming into place, as the euro dollar coming into place. So then we have the American dollar, we have the euro dollar, the euro currency, we also have the BRICS currency. The trinity of these three currencies will push people towards the one world government trading system. And whatever that system is going to be in the backdrop of cryptocurrency, we're beginning to see a very interesting development in political circles, but the biblical narrative will always be exciting, for it always shows you the other unexpected window. That in the midst of these three economic bullies walking into the world, we still have a woman sitting on the scarlet beast. That is on chapter 17. That is the role of the Catholic Church, the role of religion in world politics. Religion and politics. Religion and politics is the correct definition of what the new world order looks like. The church will be praying for us while politics is robbing us. And these days, as you look around, you open up your CNN, you open up your BBCs, you open up your Al Jazeeras, you open up your cable networks, and you look into the politics of the world. Even if you're blind, you can see there is something that is cooking. Whether it is edible or not, it's a story for another day. But America wants the morality and the immorality of America to become the new DNA of the world over. And we have seen the LGBTQ issues being pushed on the throats of all countries around the world. And if you don't agree to these principles, then your economy is held in shambles. When Trump came into power, he seemed to have put a little brake on LGBTQ issues, but he swung full house into the economic space without necessarily correcting the policies around LGBTQ issues. They are still simmering in the back office. But while people are focusing on the economic issues, Rome is preparing herself to come up as the champion of the unification of world religions. Two mischievous religions plus one. Judaism with its Yahweh concept. Christianity with its Jesus concept. Islam with its Muhammad concept. These three, all of them Abrahamic religions, are fighting over conquering the world and subduing the world under one of those religions. Christianity says everybody must be a Christian. Islam says everyone must be a Muslim and Sharia care law will run. Israel is saying we are the chosen, all of you must submit to Judaism, and Israel becomes the chosen nation. Sit around and watch this space. That religion, when it is void of ethics, morality, and empathy, it is like a gonging cymbal that makes no sense at all. We are looking at a world which is being pushed towards capitalism and Christianity. Within this capitalism is a concept. It has no blood, no soul, no breath, no life. It is the people who give these ideologies life. By themselves, they cannot survive. And to imagine the world killing each other over Islam, Christianity, Judaism, socialism, and capitalism. It amazes me because these are just bad ideas. Ideas. Is it worth it that we are told to move away from socialism, capitalism? We are still in white hands. Where is Ubuntu? The preservation of the human soul. While we are moving to the global village, the African child must ask themselves the question, what are we going to be in that global village? The Chinese are coming, fully Chinese. The Americans are coming, fully American. The Europeans are coming, fully European. The Indians are coming, fully Indian. I wonder when the